Hello, and welcome to the next in the series of our podcast. Today's podcast is on the subject of manual handling. So the first thing to say is that today's podcast is not a lesson on how to lift correctly or how to carry out manual handling procedures. It's about how we address and manage the risks from manual handling that our workforce faces. So what's the current position? Where are we? Well, the health and safety performance in construction has improved over the past decade, and the number and rate of fatal incidents, workplace injuries, and work-related ill health show a general long-term downward trend. However, the level of incidents and ill health remain high, with some recent signs of the numbers of cases levelling off. So currently, the position is in the year 2015-16, 3.7% of the workforce was suffering from an illness that they believe was caused or made worse by their work. And the construction industry has a statistically significantly higher rate of musculoskeletal disorders than the national average for other industries. And an MS is an injury affecting the bones or soft tissue structure other than organs of the body that is caused by manual handling at work. And examples include sprains of ligaments, strains of muscles or tendons, injuries to the spine, joints, bones or nerves, and abdominal hernias. So, what's the problem? Incorrect manual handling is one of the most common causes of injury at work. It causes work-related musculoskeletal disorders, which account for over a third of all workplace injuries. Manual handling injuries can happen anywhere where people are at work. Heavy manual labour, awkward postures and manual materials handling and previous or existing injuries are all risk factors in developing MSDSs. So, what are the problems that we're facing? Well, while only 2% of fatal injuries were accounted for by handling, lifting or carrying, and slip or trip or fall accidents, they accounted for almost 40% of all the self-reported non-fatal injuries to workers. And we can see from this slide a breakdown of how those injuries are occurring. See others which are so rarefied, if you like, they don't have their own group. It's the only one that comes somewhere near. Slips, trips and falls, as we all know, is one of the biggest causes of non-fatal injury and minor injury. But right up there with the slip, trips and falls, which kind of ties to the same thing, is the handling, lifting or carrying sector. So if someone is injured by handling, lifting or carrying, on average, their time off work will be 7.6 days. So, as always in these things, we have a look at the relevant legislation, the laws that bind us to these requirements. So obviously, first one, as we always have, Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 and the Manual Handling Operations 1992 as amended in 2002. So Section 2 of the Health and Safety at Work Act tells us that it should be the duty of every employer to ensure, so far as is reasonably practicable, the health, safety and welfare at work of all his employees, ensuring, so far as is reasonably practicable, the safety and absence of risks to health in connection with the use, handling, storage and transport of articles and substances, and the provision of such information, instruction, training and supervision as is necessary to ensure, so far as is reasonably practicable, the health and safety at work of his employees, without risk to the health and the provision and maintenance of means of access to and egress from that are safe and without such risk. Regulation 4 of the Manual Handling Operation Regulations requires employers to avoid the need for hazardous manual handling so far as is reasonably practicable, assess the risk of injury from any hazardous manual handling that can't be avoided, and reduce the risk of injury from hazardous manual handling so far as is reasonably practicable. Regulation 5 of the Manual Handling Regulations is the duties upon our employees. And employees have a duty to follow systems of work in place for their safety, use equipment provided for their safety properly, cooperate with their employer on health and safety matters, and inform their employer if they identify hazardous handling activities. Take care to make sure that their activities do not put others at risk. So, what's our main duty? Well, the main duty is to avoid lifting operations that have a risk of injury. And where it's not practical to do this, assess each lifting operation and reduce the risk of injury to the lowest level reasonably practicable. Look carefully at higher risk operations to make sure they've been properly assessed. And while weight is an important factor, there are many other risk factors which you need to take into account. Medical and scientific knowledge stress the importance of ergonomic approach to manual handling, taking into account the nature of the task, the load, the working environment, the individual capability, and this approach requires worker participation. Consider the risks from manual handling to the health and safety of your employees. If there are risks, the regulations apply. Consult and involve your workforce. Your employees know firsthand what the risks in the workplace are, and they can offer practical solutions to controlling them. So, as in all these regulations, there's a hierarchy of control to control the risk, very similar to the ones we've looked at in working at height. Elimination, physically remove the hazard. Substitution, replace the hazard. Bring in engineering controls, isolate people from the hazard. Administrative controls, change the way people work, look at new procedures. And as a last result, as ever, PPE to protect the workforce. So, eliminate, avoid. Consider mechanisation. Telehandlers and other moving plant can be used to transport materials around, and this takes the manual handling risk out of it completely. But be aware of the new hazards from automation or mechanisation. Automating plants still needs cleaning, maintenance, etc. And lift trucks must be suitable for the work and have properly trained operators. Substitute. What we're looking at now are the given weights of concrete blocks. So when we look at the 190s, 24.5 kilograms. We start looking at the hundreds, 13.8. Big change, big difference here. Remember, these are dry weights. They're not huge weights. Most people in average health can manage these weights, but the repetition of laying blocks, the twisting and turning involved. So if we can substitute for the smaller block, we get the same R values, we can get the same structural values. It's just a case of laying more blocks, but it does take that weight out of it. So engineering controls, if it's reasonably practical to do so, and the risks identified in your risk assessment can be reduced or eliminated by mechanical aids, you should provide them. But you should consider such mechanical aids in other situations as well. They can improve productivity as well as safety. Even something as simple as a sack truck can make a big improvement. But this remains a manual handling activity because the motive force comes from a human being. Where we looked at telehandlers, forklift trucks, things like that. They've got engines that provide the power. Sack trucks, genie hoists, pallet trucks, that kind of thing are powered by the human body. So administrative controls, you'll have all seen this slide. It's a famous picture. And this is where the myth, you can only lift 25 kilograms at a time, comes from. There is no weight limit in the regulations. What it talks about is so far as is reasonably practicable. If you've got a one-time lift that's a little bit over 25 kilograms, doesn't mean to say you shouldn't do it. But if it's been properly planned prior to the stuff arriving on site, it could have been reduced maybe, and things can be better. But this is what the human body for normal men and women, average men and women, can lift. So it's 25 kilograms tucked into the trunk, tight to the body, but we can see how we lose it at shoulder height with the arms extended, it's down to 5 kilograms. So when we look at these administrative controls, again changing the way we work, twisting, guideline weights must be reduced if the handler twists to the side during the operation. As a rough guide, reduce the weight by 10% if the handler twists beyond 45 degrees, and reduce the weight by 20% if the handler twists beyond 90. Frequent lifting and lowering, again looking at block laying. The guide weights are for infrequent operations, up to about 30 operations per hour, where the pace of work is not forced, adequate pauses to rest or different muscles are possible, and the load is not supported by the handler for any length of time. But we have to reduce the weights if the operation is repeated more often than that. And as a rough guide, we reduce the weights by 30% if the operation is repeated once or twice a minute, by 50% if it is repeated 5 to 8 times a minute, and by 80% where it is repeated more than 12 times a minute. Train the workforce. As I said earlier, there are many courses around team lifting and ergonomic lifting techniques. And training should cover manual handling risk factors and how injuries can occur, how to carry out safe manual handling, including good handling techniques, the use of mechanical aids, and practical work to allow the trainer to identify and put anything that the trainee is not doing safely. Training cannot overcome a lack of mechanical aids, unsuitable loads, and bad working conditions. In a nutshell, that's pretty much the considerations we need to take. So in summary, we need to look back at eliminate where we can. If we're doing a job regularly, can we get it nearer to the load? Can we break it down into smaller loads? Can we get mechanical means closer to where it has to be put in? All of these things have to be considered. So just in conclusion, a little bit about who we are. As you know, we're the Building Safety Group. We were established in 1965 and we're the largest construction safety group operating throughout mainland UK. We're a not-for-profit organisation recognised by the HSE, with over 800 member companies located throughout mainland UK, and we carry out 18,000 sites and over 10,000 people attend our training courses. Thank you very much for your attention today. I hope you found it informative and useful. If you have any questions about what discussed today, please do get in contact with me. The details are on your screen right now. And once again, thank you very much.